brothers. Welcome to the 7th episode of Gear Growth and Gains, episode 007. I am coming to you here today from the hub of the universe, or Scranton with clams, depending on your perspective. A little Sopranos reference. All right, so today I'm going to talk about a few topics. So the first topic that we will discuss will be long-acting GH formulations versus rapid recombinant GH. That's, long-acting would be examples like citrulline, Somatrogon, which is also referred to as Nagenla. That's a Pfizer product now. We'll talk about those in terms of efficacy versus tolerability. Long-acting GH formulations obviously have a chronic release profile, whereas rapid recombinant GH, which is bioidentical to the GH that is secreted by our pituitaries, is very rapid acting. All right, section number 2 will be L-citrulline and arginine. So we'll talk about their effects on performance pre-training. Section number 3 will be GIP and fat, body fat and metabolism. And section number 4 will be oxandrolone's unique effects. This is the latest article that I have sent to Milled for unique effects of AAS series. So we'll discuss that as well before he publishes it. All right, so let's get into it. So first thing actually I want to tell you guys about, I want to talk to you about a company called Physique. Okay, so Physique is a blood work company. They handle LabCorp and Quest, and they are nationwide. There's only 3 states that they cannot handle, which is New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. But this company, dude, it's crazy. It's like they're 2/3 off. It's like you pay 1/3 the price for the same blood work. They've got over 1,000 biomarkers. You can request biomarkers if they don't have them, which is unlikely, but they will fulfill them. They're crazy. You guys should use them. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to it. You could use my code Type-IIx. That is TYPE-IIX. I'll give you more information in the show notes, but I just want to mention Physique to you because this company is insane. Its LabCorp is it's like 1/3 the price that you pay, maybe a half at most versus anybody else. And they do Quest, which is still a good discount, but if you can use LabCorp, it's crazy cheap. So it's great. I'll tell you more about that in the show notes. All right, so let's get into it. So first section, long-acting GH formulations. Okay, with these long-acting GH formulations versus rapid recombinant GH. Long-acting formations are analogs of GH, meaning that they are not the same 22K GH molecule that our pituitary secrete. That's RHGH. It's bioidentical. The long-acting growth hormone analogs are really an issue with compliance. That's what they were directed at. Okay, that's why they were created, because kids do not want to be injecting GH every single day. You can't rely on them to actually do it. That's for the short stature, kids with growth hormone deficiency as well. So most of these have been thrown away, have been abandoned. A lot of these trials have not made it through clinical trials, but some of them have. We'll talk about some that have and some that have not. Focus on the ones that have, that are still on the market. There's only a couple. But basically, they present with some potential pitfalls, chiefly more chronic release profile. While these long-acting growth hormone analogs require less frequent pinning, and they are generally non-inferior versus RHGH for growth velocity in clinical use for short stature in children, and they do enhance body composition and growth hormone deficiency. They do not increase IGF-1, the primary myokine that enhances the increase in body size and muscle size to the same degree as RHGH. Most of these long-acting growth hormone analogs that have been trialed have been shuttered or terminated because of unfavorable tolerability to efficacy and or cost ineffectiveness. Those that have been abandoned include Some that had a 14-day frequency of administration, those were the worst. The ones that had a weekly, once a week, every 7-day frequency of administration were more mixed. Some that have been abandoned include Nootropic Depot. That was a depot formulation using protein crystallization, supercritical CO2, had a 14-day administration frequency. It actually made it to market for like a while. I think this one was probably in South Korea, Europe, perhaps. It was on the market for a while, but they pulled it. It had too many side effects. Then there's Pfizer's. Pfizer had a product. Novo Nordisk had a product that relied on pegylation, which is like an attachment, 43 kilodalton atom attachment, or 40 kDa in the case of Pfizer's products. They were both dropped basically because of unsatisfactory IGF-1 profiles, insufficient peak and duration of IGF-1 area under the curve, and in the case of Pfizer as well, high rate of lipoatrophy at the injection site. So that would be like you just basically are getting like pock marks because the GH is burning fat locally as well. And that is something that happens even with GH, little, it's microscopic probably, but it happens. And insulin does the opposite. It causes basically liposynthesis. It can cause people to get little fat lumps, little lipomas even. Anyway, so that was an issue with the Pfizer product especially. Now, some that have made it to market it's pretty interesting. So, Jintrolong is a Chinese product at the moment, very popular in China, that does apparently have a sufficient IGF-1 profile and a sufficient effect, non-inferior effect on growth velocity in short-statured children. But I'm going to take the position that these cannot be as good as recombinant human growth hormone because we know how recombinant growth hormone works. It gets IGF-1 up to its peak within essentially days, up to like 80-85% of where it will be within like 6 weeks. It's like totally peaked. And then it does start to come down because of GH desensitization. I have written about that. I write about that in depth in Bolus that will be coming out soon. Jintrolong is a 40 kDa pegylation with a 7-day frequency of administration. The one that I'll talk about more than any other one is going to be Somatrogon. This is otherwise known as Nagenla or MOD, MOD 4023. With this drug, it's pretty interesting. The way that it works is it's basically HCG's beta subunit attached to the recombinant human growth hormone molecule. Okay, so it preserves all of the primary effects of recombinant endogenous 22 kGH, like recombinant growth hormone that we're used to. However, it's fused to 3 copies of carboxyl terminal peptide, CTPs, of HCG's beta subunit. If you know anything about HCG, you know that HCG is endogenously present in humans. It's in women who are pregnant. And it is essentially LH with a beta subunit, okay, which extends its activity, extends its area under the curve and biological duration. Basically, Somatrogon is interesting. It has a fairly good IGF-1 profile. It is at its core recombinant growth hormone with some modifications. It has a 7-day frequency of administration. And the way it works out is basically for these kids, right? They're like 40, 45 kg, short stature kids. The dosing would be equivalent between genotropin at 10 IUs weekly to about 30 IUs weekly for the Somatrogon. So you can see, you need more of this versus GH recombinant growth hormone, but that's not terrible. 30 IUs a week versus 10. So the potential pitfalls of these long-acting growth hormone analogs include this chronic release profile that I mentioned to you. The real issue with it is the potential formation, at least, of anti-drug antibodies. Okay, so that means that these drugs do present with a risk of GH resistance, unlike modern E. coli synthesis methods for recombinant growth hormone. Older methods did have this concern. Now we're back to it. Okay, there are also growth and metabolic perturbations, right? So with these more chronic GH profiles, you're dealing with increased glucose, increased insulin from GH, and what does that mean? That equals insulin resistance. All right, so these things are going to cause more insulin resistance, more metabolic harm, and potentially growth perturbations as well. Let's talk about their IGF-1 profile. So with recombinant RHGH, IGF-1 levels basically stabilize fairly quickly within a matter of days. They peak at 6 weeks after starting a course, and then after months or so, basically do start to diminish. But the practical upshot is that it's unclear if these long-acting growth hormone analogs like Somatrogon, for example, that we'll focus on, it's unclear how they should be titrated dose-wise. So I don't know if it should be based on the peak, the nadir, that is the drop, or a calculated mean of summated IGF-1 curves. So it's still a big mystery. We understand GH. It's basically the endogenous hormone. So yeah, so that's it for those. Okay, so we'll move on to the next topic. So topic number 2, we're going to discuss L-citrulline and arginine, okay, for pre-workout performance effects, and those generally would include muscle pump, some mechanical effects on cell stretching, and protein synthesis, muscle size, albeit minor, but still worth talking about. So let's talk about those. L-citrulline is a non-essential amino acid. Non-essential refers to those that are endogenously synthesized, so we don't absolutely need it from the diet. These augment L-arginine bioavailability, NO production, and performance. L-citrulline's primary food source is watermelon, potentially ergogenic to vascular function and exercise performance. Its putative yet not well-supported mechanisms include increased blood flow, vasodilation, and skeletal muscle perfusion. L-citrulline may assist in ammonia detoxification via the urea cycle. That means that ammonia in working muscles, that promotes fatigue, and increase in blood glycolysis rate, increases lactate accumulation, which is directly responsible for fatigue, all right, diminished performance. L-citrulline is an essential component of the liver's urea cycle that is responsible for ammonia elimination as urea in our urine. L-citrulline supplementation, therefore, may assist in ammonia detoxification, and therefore decrease fatigue, as well decreased lactate production, so more decreased fatigue, aerobic utilization of pyruvate, and this will improve muscle function and attenuate fatigue. Arginine. A lot of people wonder, now this is why I wanted to discuss these, because a lot of people say, well, why would I take arginine? L-citrulline is more potent, it does the same thing. Well, it's because the two are synergistic, which is surprising, because L-arginine, right, and L-citrulline, they combine greater natively to promote vasodilation and smooth muscle relaxation. L-citrulline may enhance L-arginine's bioavailability by suppressing arginase activity, that's breakdown, by acting as a strong allosteric inhibitor. And you really cannot get the same effect from more L-citrulline as you will from two in combination. L-arginine contributes to augmenting NO synthesis and may enhance muscular function, fatigue resistance, and recovery processes as well. Here's why it's so interesting. In vitro studies suggest that the basically constant of dissociation of the enzyme, actually it's the Michaelis-Menten, saturability of the enzyme for L-arginine is in the micromolar range, while the concentration for L-arginine, at least in endothelial cells where NO is active, is in the millimolar range, and therefore under physiologic conditions, NO synthase is saturated with its L-arginine substrate, meaning that L-arginine should not be expected to be rate limiting for NOS. Yet, in practice, in reality,
L-citrulline, and in particular in combination with L-arginine, are absolutely ergogenic in human data, in direct human data on strength and performance. So the two clearly are synergistic, and you simply cannot get the same effect out of more L-citrulline as you can by combining the two. Very useful, useful supplements. I think that guys should use them. They're cheap, they're effective, and they're healthy. They're actually healthy. There is one consideration that needs to be made, and that is if you're taking PDE5 inhibitors or nitrates like beetroot extract, so PDE5 inhibitors like, Viagra, Cialis, Levitra, Stendra, they all combine, these PDE5 inhibitors and nitrates combine synergistically, there's that word again, to contribute to endothelial vasodilation via NO, and this promotes hypotension. Hypotension is bad because you can pass out and crack your head open. You can go into a coma and you can die. So be careful if you're taking all of these things at once. That's it. So you don't want to take Cialis, L-arginine, L-citrulline, beetroot extract, all of this shit together. You might surprise yourself. At the very least, you're going to stand up quick, especially in the heat or with a little hypoglycemia, and you're just going to pass out and crack your head open at best. So don't combine all of them. Just do, L-citrulline and L-arginine, the supplements, dietary supplements. Think about minimizing any other drugs in that class because you might pass out and crack your head open at least. All right, so let's talk about the next section. So let's talk about GIP and fat with respect to body fat and metabolism. So GIP and fat. GIP, the interesting thing with GIP, right, is it's implicated with these later incretin drugs, retatrutide and tirzepatide. Okay, so with tirzepatide, you are getting GIP agonism. With GIP agonism, GIP actually functions in fat cells to increase fat accrual in humans. And I am going to stand by this. The research, there is some contrary research in the sense that it's metabolically healthy, right, to have GIP as well as GLP-1 activity, but it's not good for body composition. So with GIP and fat, tirzepatide, right, it decreases abdominal visceral fat, decreases liver fat, but increases subcutaneous abdominal fat. That's what's visually present. So visceral abdominal fat is really mostly between the organs, right? It's not something that you see. Liver fat, obviously, you don't see. If we're purely concerned about body composition, that clearly, and the evidence, in my experience, is clearly showing this. Tirzepatide is for bulking. Semaglutide is for cutting. Semaglutide is very potent at suppressing appetite and also doesn't have this effect on fat accrual. Okay, now, even more so, GIP, right? The function of GIP is for the management of blood glucose, and it's insulinotropic. Insulin, right? Insulinotropic activity totally suppresses lipolysis, even at endogenous levels. Having a bit of food suppresses lipolysis because of its effect on hormone-sensitive lipase via insulin. All right, so this effect of GIP is not beneficial for your abs, basically. Right? Your central, abdominal, subcutaneous depots are going to be affected negatively by GIP agonism. However, it is beneficial metabolically. Let me make this kind of comparison. So growth hormone is not metabolically healthy. It gives us insulin resistance, right? And it stimulates hormone-sensitive lipase. It does the opposite of insulin. Okay? But we don't care. We are bodybuilders. We care about how we look. We care about fat. We care about strength. don't care about insulin resistance. Now, we will later, but we don't have diabetes. So I am going to strongly make the case that tirzepatide is for cutting, right? Oh, sorry. Tirzepatide is for bulking. Semaglutide is for cutting, right? Retatrutide, some more going on there, but I would say probably even more so not for cutting. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. All right, so I want to discuss the article that I wrote for Meso about oxandrolone's unique effects. I'm going to review it with you. I submitted this to Millet. I'm hoping it'll be published soon. It was really interesting. It took a lot more independent research than I thought I would end up doing, but I ended up having to go to the textbooks a lot for this one. So oxandrolone anavar's unique features include particular benefits for reducing abdominal fat, topical, anti-catabolism, glucocorticoid modulation by crosstalk regulation between AR and GR. The unique mechanism is crosstalk, and strength. However, oxandrolone also affects lipids unfavorably. This fact connotes that rational oxandrolone use requires a careful balancing of considerations, trading off the benefit, reduced abdominal fat weighed against this dyslipidemic risk. Oxandrolone particularly reduces abdominal fat mass by stimulating hepatic ketogenesis. Okay? Hepatic ketogenesis, it is a double-edged sword. So before we count our chickens, right, enhance hepatic ketogenesis, fat mass reduction because less fat is being stored in fat cells. You still have to take stock of the reality that this is analogous to nandrolone's bimodal effect on connective tissues at the expense of left ventricular hypertrophic diastolic dysfunction via its stimulating ACE activity. Okay, this is because oxandrolone's effect on hepatic lipase is the reason for this enhanced hepatic ketogenesis. So oxandrolone increases hepatic lipase activity unfavorably by reducing larger lipoproteins to smaller ones. This causes a shift from HDL-C to VLDL, posing an elevated dyslipidemic risk. Oxandrolone's lowering of HDL-C is caused by an increased hepatic triglyceride lipase activity. Hepatic lipase is a liver-secreted enzyme that liberates fatty acids from triacylglycerol and phospholipids that are part of lipoproteins, including HDL, thereby shifting from larger HDL2 to smaller HDL3 particles. Makes us susceptible to dyslipidemia, cardiovascular disease risk. Also, since oxandrolone is non-aromatizable, it is devoid of any estrogen benefits to lipids, because estrogens decrease HTGLA. Since it is metabolized extensively in the liver, it exerts profound effects on these hepatic proteins like hepatic lipase. So that basically means that the same increased hepatic triglyceride lipase activity that diminishes lipid particle size accompanies this enhanced hepatic ketogenesis. So dietary fats are non-water soluble, right? Obviously, they're fats, they're lipids, they're lipophilic, and they must be digested in the stomach with the aid of bile acids released by the gallbladder and during fat transport. These are packaged as chylomicrons via the lymphatic system. In fat or muscle tissue, they are acted upon by the lipoprotein lipase, which liberates the fatty acid from the chylomicron. These fatty acids can either be stored in the fat cell or taken up into the bloodstream for use by other tissues like muscle or liver. Increased lipolysis of triglyceride-rich lipoproteins like these chylomicrons and VLDL. The hepatic lipase takes the fatty acids to be transported to the liver. Enhanced fatty acid oxidation, this is ketogenesis, depletes the fat substrate from the pool that would otherwise be destined for storage in fat cells. That's how we get reduced fat, right? Especially abdominal fat. Oxandrolone. Oxandrolone, anavars, potently anti-catabolic. It's great for cutting. All of these things converge on that fact. Oxandrolone regulates crosstalk between the androgen receptor and the glucocorticoid receptor. It's a kind of a novel mechanism. Explain it in the article. I'm not going to go over it in depth here. It's visual. You got to read it. You got to look at the schematics. Okay. Another tremendous benefit of anavar is its effect on strength. It basically shows you that androgenicity, androgenic potency, has very little to do with strength increases from oral androgens because of oxandrolone's mechanism, which is increasing creatine synthesis and phosphocreatine stores. These replenish obviously ATP for muscle contraction. So whereas 17 alpha alkylated androgens, orals, generally stimulate hypercreatinuria, that's creatine in our urine. Injected non-17 alkylated AAS do not. This probably occurs because the 17 AAs actually increase creatine synthesis, phosphocreatine stores, repleting the body's energy source for these anaerobic glycolytic efforts like heavy lifting. And I will say that empirically, oxandrolone's rapid effect on strength, so potent, rapid, that it must occur by a mechanism besides ligand-induced transcription. Right? It has to be something else. And it's this effect on creatine synthesis. All right, so that's the show, guys. All right, so thanks for listening. I want you guys seriously to listen, like and subscribe, share this around. I want this thing to grow. This is a good podcast. There's a lot of good information here. People will love it if people know about it. I'll just mention you guys again. Look at the show notes for Fidomics. Okay, Fidomics. I'll put the affiliate link in there for you. And before I leave, I want to leave you guys with an inspirational quote for the week. All right, so clever fighter is one who not only wins, excels in winning with ease. Hence is neither reputation for wisdom nor courage. Rather, he wins his battles by making no mistakes. This means conquering the enemy who is already defeated. Hence, the skillful fighter puts himself in a position that makes defeat impossible and does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy. All right, guys, with that, I will let you go. Have a good one. Thank you guys for listening. Share around, like, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon. All right.